This is Math 122, Homework 2, and I'm going to show you how to do problem number 21. In this problem, you're going to solve what's called a quadratic equation. And our equation is x squared minus 10x plus 16 equals 0. In this problem, you're being asked, hey, what mystery number will work in x's place here so that when I square that number and then subtract 10 times that number and then add 16 to that amount, I get 0. It's called finding the zeros for this equation, or solving it for what x will give us 0 on the side. So I could guess and test, but that could take a long time. So we have a process for solving these. And in this problem, we can actually factor it and then look at the factored forms to find out what will make the equation equal 0. So when we factor a trinomial, remember what we're doing? We're looking for the two binomials multiplied that make this trinomial when you FOIL. So we're thinking of FOIL backwards. And remember, FOIL is first, outer, inner, last. So you ask yourself, what times itself here and here will give me x squared. For what first get multiplied, you get x squared. Well, that one's easy. X times x. And then I always look at the lasts next. What last will give me positive 16 right here and right here when I'm multiplying? But wait a second. You do have to worry about that middle term. Remember, whatever gets multiplied here also has to add up here and here to make this middle term. So what we do is we go off to the side and we look at the factor pairs of 16 that add up to negative 10. I'm going to show you a little trick I learned with my 8th graders. What I do is I put the 16 up here, a little time sign above it, and I put the negative 10. So negative 10 coefficient here at the bottom. And I think about factor pairs of 16 that add up to a negative 10. Well, let's see, 16 and 1. Is there any way I'm going to combine either a positive or a negative 16 or a positive or a negative 1 to get 10? I don't think so. 16 minus 1 is 15. Negative or positive 15, not going to work. Let's try another factor pair. 16 and 1 didn't work. Let's try 8 and 2. Alright, they've got to multiply to make a positive 16, but add up to a negative 10. I think we're getting somewhere here. Because if I make them both negative, a negative times a negative is positive, a negative 8 and a negative 2. They multiply to make positive 16, but they add up to a negative 10. So let's try that. If I put one of them here, I'll put the negative 8 here, doesn't really matter, and the minus 2 here. If I FOIL it back in my head, the x times x gives me the x squared. This minus 8 times x will give me negative 8x. This x times a minus 2 will give me minus 2x. And the negative 8 times the negative 2, remember I'm thinking of them as negative numbers when I'm multiplying them with the minus signs in front. That will give me the 16. And look, those two middle terms, the inner and the outer, will give me minus 10x when I add them together. So I've got the right factoring for my trinomial, but I'm not done with this problem yet. Now I need to figure out what values for x will make this equal 0. Well, you basically got two amounts here. Whatever this is, once I find out what x is, times whatever this amount is, once I find out what x is. And when you have two mystery numbers, I'll call one of them a and one of them b, and you're multiplying them and you get 0, what do you know about at least one of those numbers? At least one of them has to be 0. For instance, I could have this, or I could have this, or they both could be 0. So we're going to go back up here now, and we're going to ask ourselves, okay, either this has to be 0, or this has to be 0 in order to get into 0 when I multiply them. Remember, you've got a little multiplication sign here. So we write out two separate equations. Either this piece of this product is 0, or this piece of this product is 0. And then you solve these two little equations. How do I solve something, subtract 8 equals 0? Well, you can figure it out in your head. 8 minus 8 equals 0. Or you can use an algebraic process of solving. Add 8 to each side, and I get x equals 8. Add 2 to each side in the other equation, and I get x equals 2. Alright, now I'm going to get this out of the way. And what I've just found out is there are two solutions to this equation. When x is 8, this problem, an 8 here for x, an 8 here for x, x squared is 8 squared is 64, minus 10 times 8 is 80. 64 minus 80 is negative 16. Add 16, get 0. So the 8 worked to make 0. And the other answer that makes 0 is x equals 2. And you can check it out just like I did with the 8. I go back up to my original problem. 2 squared is 4 minus 10 times 2. That's 4 minus 20. 4 minus 20 is negative 16 plus 16 equals 0. So again, we have two solutions because it's a quadratic equation. There are often two solutions to those. X equals 8 and x equals 2.